What's up, guys? Before we get started in today's video, which is going to be on how to combat a pin that bobs and drops, I just got this brand new, it's the new PSE Super RTX 37. Seems like these names keep getting more and more ridiculous every year. But been playing with it, been shooting really well, but made a couple little tweaks and got it aiming even better. But before we get into the nitty gritty of that, I want you to take a second and head on over to InsideOutPrecision.com if you would like to support the channel. We got lots of new stuff on there. It's actually under the new category when you click the shop tab. Christmas is right around the corner. I'm not sure, I think this video is probably gonna drop a week before Christmas, but orders seem to ship pretty quickly. Bear with us on some of the colors that are unavailable. There is a shortage on hoodies right now, but there's lots of options, lots of color options, lots of logo options, stuff for your wife, stuff for your kids. So we really appreciate all the support, and hopefully you find something you like on there. So head on over to InsideOutPrecision.com and pick yourself up some merch. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Inside Out Precision. Today we're going to be talking about a very common problem that I hear about all the time with people's aim or their hold, basically, when they're shooting. And that is a pin that either wants to start high and drop low, or it'll be in the middle, but you just get these little bobs and it's just, you're constantly fighting it. So we're gonna talk about how to combat that, because there's actually a pretty simple trick that a lot of people probably think their draw length and everything is already nailed down, but you will actually be able to combat that with adjusting your draw length. So a lot of the time, people, they go in, they get fitted, whatever, and they just think like, oh, I measured at 29, I must be a 29-inch draw length. Different makes and models of bows will all feel different. Matthews tend to draw a half-inch longer than other brands. I shoot a 30-inch in a Matthews, I shoot a 30.5 in pretty much every other bow. I shot my PSE at 30.5, I shot my Hoyt at 30.5. So don't get stuck on thinking that you have to stay at a specific draw length. Usually, when you have a pin that just has that low bob, like they call it a dip bang sometimes, where it's like you're aiming and you're squeezing, and then right, like it never fails, right as the shot goes off, there's just this little bonk, this little bobble. That is usually because your draw length is just a touch too short. Now, it's really obvious if your draw length is way too short. Like if you're sitting there and you're like this, or your body's all hunched up like this, or you have to, draw and then bring your head into the string like that, that's obvious. But you would be amazed at what an eighth or a quarter of an inch in your draw length can do. I've got a really good example of it right here. I'm gonna kind of zoom in on this, this target here. Let's see, need to go, how do I get this? Try not to squeak too much. Okay, let's zoom in on that. So I have been shooting my new PSE here. I'll show it to you in a sec, but now there's a bunch of other arrow holes in this target, but this was like 7 rounds, and you can see a majority, like the good shots were right in the middle, but I kept getting this pin that would bob low on me. So you can see there's a cluster of like 3 down here. One of them caught the 10, the other 2 would have been 9s. And it would, sometimes it wouldn't even be bobbing, but it would start in the middle and it would just start dropping slowly, boom. So when I shot, my arm was moving down slightly, so that's the direction the arrow went. So what I did to combat that, first I tried lengthening my D-loop a little bit. I don't know, I maybe lengthened it 1/8 of an inch. That helped, but I was still having a little bit of a bob, and I felt like my anchor was starting to float a little bit here. Or not, I shouldn't say float, but it didn't feel as solid. I felt like I was kind of having to duck to get on the string now, because, as if I kept my hand in the same place, that string was further away, so I had to duck to get into it, and it didn't feel comfortable to bring everything back. So I put my old D-loop back on, and I took 3 full twists out of my main string, and then started playing around with it. And I ended up actually taking 4 full twists out of my main string. On the drawboard, that ended up being about 3/16 of an inch. So basically 1/4 of an inch. And it made a world of difference. Like I said, so the reason that this is lots of people look at their draw length from this angle, right? Like they want, you know, this arm out in front of them, level shoulders, back arm, you know, parallel or slightly above parallel with the ground or the arrow. But what they fail to look at is this alignment, right? So without changing, like this looks good, right? But if I can lengthen my draw, if I lengthen my draw length 1/4 of an inch, it's not gonna be in my arm here or my elbow here. It's gonna be across the chest. And so it's the contraction of the back and the expanding of the chest. And it's gonna help with that alignment. It's gonna help get this elbow behind and that shoulder locked in down low here. Now it shouldn't feel forced. You shouldn't have to come back and go like this. We're not hunching the shoulder. It's back, and as it comes back, it's almost like if you just kept drawing a bow and drawing a bow and drawing a bow, eventually it's gonna hit the right position. So again, if I lengthen the draw length, I'm not gonna, you know, keep everything across my chest and back the same and just push my arm out straight. It's gonna be more in the back and the chest here, and that's an exaggerated motion, but like I said, you'd be amazed at what an 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch difference will make. Now, if you're a new shooter, this isn't something I'm gonna tell you to mess with. You gotta have a pretty good hold to notice that little bob. But if you feel like, you know, you can hold that pin, you know, in the 10 or just outside the 10 pretty consistently, but you just constantly have that little dip, then this is something you can totally mess with. So you can do the D loop sometimes. I usually start with the D loop just because it's easier and I don't have to mess with my peep rotation or anything. Start with the D loop. If that doesn't feel right, you can do, you know, put your old D loop back on and play with that string a little bit. So taking twists out of the string will lengthen it, in will shorten it. And then if it, you know, still feels a little off, start playing with that D loop length. You know, sometimes you go a full 1/2 inch in draw length and then shorten up your D loop an 1/8 of an inch or something like that. So it's something you need to play around with, but it will really, really help that low drop. It's probably the most common, I wouldn't say problem, but issue that I hear about and get asked about with target shooters is like, man, I always freeze like right here, or my pin starts right here, and as I start to pull through the shot, it just starts dropping and dropping and dropping, and you know, the shot breaks at the bottom of the 10 and it's either barely touching or it's a 9. So by lengthening that draw length a little bit, it will definitely help combat that. So give that a try. Let me know how it goes. You know, there's always something to tinker with in archery. I would recommend, this is something that your pro shop should probably be able to do for you. But you know, you need to know what to ask when you go in. You just don't want to go in and say, hey, I need to lengthen my draw length 1/8 of an inch, because they might not know how. But if you go in and say, hey, can you take 3 twists out of my main string, they should be able to do that. And then you can explain why you're doing that. If you have a press at home, this will be a lot easier. Write things down. Write down, you know, what your D loop length is, what your string loop length, or what your draw length is, all that stuff, so you can get everything back to where you started if things start getting worse. But generally speaking, it gets better with a little bit longer draw. Now, obviously there's you don't want to go too far. You don't want to be like, you shouldn't have to be like this to be at full draw. But obviously all these things are within reason. I don't want you know, don't go lengthen your draw 3.5 inches because your pin's bobbing a little low. But I hope this tip helps, guys. I know it definitely just improved my shots. So give it a try and let me know how it goes. Remember, till next time, precision is a decision. Keep them in the middle. I'll see you on the range.